Hi, my name is Tao. My presentation today is on guided reading. So what is guided reading? During guided reading, students are placed in groups of 4 to 6 students according to their needs, reading levels, and strategy use. These groups then meet with the teacher and books are chosen to build on the strategies the student already have and to support them in developing additional ones that will allow them to become more effective readers. The groups can change from week to week depending on successes and specific needs and how they grow. During the guided reading session, the teacher has the opportunity to work with small groups of students as well as with each student individually on what they need to improve. Students will be introduced to different types of texts, including brochure, diaries, fiction, non-fiction, etc. These texts will connect to other areas of the curriculum, including science, social study, or geography. Guided reading is an ongoing assessment and observations of student reading behavior. Challenges and strategies to overcome when implementing this practice. So what do I do with the rest of the students in class while I'm working with the one guided reading group only 4 to 6 students? Well, the remaining students can be engaged in higher order thinking literacy centers. These centers need to be thoroughly explained to students before guided reading session starts, so that students can work independently. The expectations for level or work and behavior need to be clear, and their work needs to be monitored and checked regularly. Some examples of the centers are word work, independent writing, reader response, share reading centers, storytelling center, poetry plays, overhead centers, listening centers, or partner reading centers. Another meaningful task that the student can be involved in are the independent tasks. These tasks could be similar to many of the literacy centers, just done as an independent instead of a group. The examples are independent reading or reader response logs. So this is when students can complete a reader response to the share reading from that week or the independent reading book. Classroom management techniques. No matter which setup you choose, it is important that consequences are in place in case the rule is broken. By consistently enforcing these consequences, students will quickly catch on and the number of interruptions will quickly decrease. Classroom management techniques which can be used during guided reading could be the reward system, so the quietest group gets to fill in the square on the good work graph. At the end of the week, the group with the most square filled in receive a reward. Or the student with the most quality work completed get a stamp on the card. When they fill their card, they get to pick a prize or reward. Star listening system. Students who are on task get a star beside their name. Students who are not on task risk losing a star. The 5 students with the most stars on Friday receive a reward. This could be prizes, free time, or favorite activities. You could have group games coin for their team based on how well they work during the session. Putting up stickers or stamps into a chart when students are on task. Or have alternative locations or activities for those students who are off task or disruptive to focus. So the location could be the library or the resource room. Stoplight for volume works well and might be a good way to let students know the expected noise volume during these centers. How do I conduct assessment and evaluation of guided reading in class and manage to keep the remainder of the class on task? Make assessment and evaluation easy on yourself by being prepared. Have a binder with an at-a-glance sheet already prepared. This way you can simply jot any observation down at a time. If your centers are engaging and involved higher order thinking, the students will require at least 20 to 25 minutes to complete their task. This is more than enough to conduct a guided reading session. If you have students completing independent responses, make sure your questions are substantial enough to keep them engaged for 20 to 25 minutes. Students could be continuing a guided writing task that was introduced earlier in the day or the week. If you have all the positive reinforcements and consequences in place, you should be able to conduct a 20 to 25 minutes uninterrupted guided reading session and complete any necessary assessments. What are reasonable assessment goals for guided reading in class? How often can I assess? You can and should be assessing during every guided reading session. What we don't always realize is that we are constantly assessing our student and changing our instruction to meet their needs. We just don't always write it down. Our assessment drives our instruction. What can be assessed during guided reading? Inferencing, making connection, comprehension, retail, literary elements. All of these aspects can be informally assessed and noted in students' file. When it comes to formally assessing student, having a focus for the session is helpful. Groups need to be flexible. Depending on assessment results, you should be changing your group often, so that students who have similar needs are grouped together. Your mini lessons of direct teaching should be less than 5 minutes. This way you still have 15 to 20 minutes to listen to your group read the book and guide them to use the tools they need for further their reading. Stagger the students starting the story so that they are not listening to the person beside them figuring out the word. They should all be on different pages so that you know if they are using the strategies on their own. Once you have gone through and listened to your whole group read and compile some anecdotal notes on every child, at the end of your session, you need to put your notes together, see where students are struggling and where they are successful. Please click on the links below for the video clips on guided reading. For our first activity, please complete the survey questions posted in the discussion forum. Thank you. For our second activity, please answer only the first 2 questions. The latter questions are there for you to elaborate on if needed. So for guided reading group, do you think grouping should be homogeneous or heterogeneous? What are the advantages and disadvantages of homogeneous grouping and heterogeneous grouping? Should students be grouped together by their reading level? Should children be grouped in a variety of ways based on needs, interests, author, or genre? Or should it be grouped based on work habits, social considerations, and knowledge of strategies? The third activity, children learn about written language in an environment that is print-rich. Print should be functional and informative, reflecting diversity of language and literacy. Text selection is quite an important aspect of the guided reading lesson. Do you think that children who are just learning to read should be reading decodable texts that are constructed by using specific letter-sound patterns as well as high-frequency words, or should they read for texts that are rich in meaning? Differentiated instructions for guided reading. It is important to give beginning readers saturated exposure to the letters in the English language. They need to learn all different sounds each letter makes, as well as the sound of blends, digraphs, and vowel patterns. This strategy could be implemented by using the alphabet pages, word family lists, magnetic letters, and blends. Exposing beginning readers to a great deal of practice with high-frequency words is also necessary. It is also important to front-load the vocabulary needed to be successful at their individual reading level. The dodgeboard list, sentence strips, share sentences, side word, bingo cards, flashcards, sentences are useful for this strategy. Providing beginning readers with texts that are at the appropriate reading level is also crucial. Using level readers in small groups offer an environment in which students can feel successful. Introducing the text. This is a 3-part lesson plan: before, during, and after. For the introduction, including a brief picture walk using the same language pattern and exact words from the text to get students familiar with the text. So we could discuss about illustration, have students make predictions based on the pictures, give a sense of the story or the basic plot, pay attention to the text features, review challenging or tricky words. For the during is the independent reading time. The students are given opportunity to practice learn strategy. While the students are reading, the teachers observe reading behaviors to confirm strategy use. Prompts and cues are given to help the student apply the problem-solving strategies. Teachers record observations during this time. After is the follow-up discussions that include personal thoughts and reflection to the readings. For the first reading of the text, students read the text independently and softly to themselves. The teacher observes the group and coaches individual students as needed. Teachers uses prompts when student gets stuck or if something doesn't make sense. Teachers and students return to the text as a group to discuss questions and clarify understanding. Some other instructions that we need to focus on is to teach them comprehension strategies, such as motor comprehension, make connections, ask deeper questions, inferring, visualizing, determine importance, and summarizing. Students also need to know how to figure out unfamiliar words by looking at the pictures, skipping the words and going back to it, looking at the first and last letter, sounding it out, looking for chunks in the word. They also need to ask themselves while reading, does this make sense? Does it sound right? If it doesn't make sense, you need to backtrack. If the story stopped making sense, you need to go back to an earlier purpose story and reread. Some additional supports are use body movements and gesture as helpful reminders to help them remember the words. Use visuals including photographs and drawings. Use songs and poems. Provide additional time to enforce concepts for those who are having difficulty retaining the information. Provide books on tape. Provide study sheets with big ideas and important concepts. Modify assignments. Use specific language. Scaffold the learning assessments. We could assess a student in the accuracy in analyzing and decoding unfamiliar words, reading fluency, comprehension strategies, anecdotal records, checklist of reading and writing strategies and skills, reading inventories, writing samples, student self-assessment and peer evaluations, observations rubric, conference rubric, retelling main idea, summary, literary elements, and the teacher's observations. In summary, during guided reading, teachers work with students at the instructional level to guide them in using the context, visuals, and structure cues, reading stories to generate meaning. By using instructional level text that gradually increase in difficulty, students apply strategies and context and feel successful. We need to ensure that the focus of each guided reading is actual reading and practice. At first, we support students heavily with explanation, coaching, and interaction, and gradually release support as students learn to use guided reading strategies independently. Commit to at least 2/3 of the total guided reading time to actual reading practice. Let student needs drive instruction. By examining the results of informal observations and formal assessments, and then create an I-round the student to learn checklist for each member of the class based on the gaps you see. Dissolve and create new groups whenever student needs change. Guided reading is an ongoing observations and assessment. Guided reading is done in flexible groups that reflect changing abilities and needs. The children are grouped and regrouped in a dynamic process. Teachers need to select books that are supportive, predictable, and match the children's needs and abilities. Guided reading challenges to think deeply about how to help students become independent, strategic, and self-extending readers. Guided reading is the context in which a teacher supports the reader's development of effective strategies for processing novel texts at increasingly challenging level of difficulty.